So we're going to work through these examples before us. So it says, if sine of theta is equal to a and cos of theta is equal to b, find sine of pi on 2 plus theta. So what you're going to do is you're going to look here, and you can tell just by looking at this that we're in our second quadrant, aren't we? We're in our second quad. How do I know that I'm in my second quadrant? Because if we think about this for a second, here's my unit circle. I know that pi on 2 is here. So it's pi on 2 plus an angle. So I'm over here in my second quadrant. What do I know about sine in my second quadrant? I know that sine is positive in my second quadrant, don't I? Okay, so that's important because now what I can say is that, well, sine of pi on 2 plus theta is going to be equal to, remember, whenever you're plussing or minus pi on 2 to something, this changes. So sine is going to come to cos, and it's going to be cos of theta. And I leave it as positive. I don't put a negative here because I know that sine is positive in the second quadrant. And what is cos of theta? Well, I've been told that cos of theta is equal to b. So my answer here will be b. So let's give that a highlight. So that's the thought process that you're going to go through when doing these questions. So you're first going to say, all right, if sine of theta is equal to a and cos of theta is equal to b, find cos of 3 pi on 2 minus theta. Which quadrant are you in? Well, if it's 3 pi on 2 minus theta, I know that I'm in the third quadrant. Then you're going to ask yourself, well, the third quadrant. You're going to say, is cos positive or negative in my third quadrant? You know that cos is negative in your third quadrant. So that means that cos of 3 pi on 2 minus theta, you swap the sign. Sorry, you don't swap the sign. You turn cos to sine. And then you also have to put a negative in front of that because you know that cos is negative in the third quadrant, so it has to be negative sine of theta. And that means if sine of theta is equal to a, then negative sine of theta will be equal to negative a. So that's going to be your answer there. So again, that's the process you're going to follow. Let's go again. If sine of theta is equal to a and cos of theta is equal to b, find sine of 3 pi on 2 plus theta. Again, you know that you're in the fourth quadrant here. You know that in the fourth quadrant, sine is negative. So you know that sine of 3 pi on 2 plus theta is going to be equal to negative cos of theta. So that means it's going to be negative b. So the way I like to think this through very simply is I know that as soon as I see pi on 2 or 3 pi on 2 or 3 pi on 2 plus theta, I know that immediately I'm going to be changing the sine to a cos or the cos to a sine, and then I just need to figure out which quadrant am I in and whether or not the sine or cos there is going to change whether or not I'm positive or negative. So that's the thought process I'm going through there. All right, let's finish it off with this one here. If sine of theta is equal to a and cos of theta is equal to b, find tan of pi on 2 plus theta. Okay, so this one is a little bit more trickier because we're dealing with tan here, but let's just think it through as we normally would. Pi on 2 plus theta is taking me to the second quadrant, and I know that in my second quadrant, tan is negative. So I'm in my second quad, where tan is negative. And if we just write down exactly what's happening here, we can see that what I've got is this, pi on 2 plus theta. That means I know that tan is just sine over cos, and it would be pi on 2 plus theta each time, wouldn't it? So it'd be pi on 2 plus theta, pi on 2 plus theta. I know, for instance, for this one, sine of pi on 2 plus theta is taking me to the second quadrant. Sine is positive in the second quadrant, so this is just going to be cos of theta. And then over here, this 2 is taking me to the second quadrant where cos is negative, so it's going to be negative sine of theta. So that means if I know that cos of theta is equal to b, I'm going to get a b up here, and then negative sine of theta, that's going to be a, so it'll be negative a there. My answer will be, remember, you don't put the negative in the denominator, you just bring it out the front. That's going to be my answer. Now, we knew that tan is negative, right? So if we wanted to, we could have just said, well, I know that it's going to end up being cos of theta over sine of theta because the sine and cos is going to swap over. And then my final answer will be negative. But I thought by doing it in full here, it might just help you as you're going through this for the first time. Okay, that's the thinking and the process there for solving these things. So hopefully this has made sense and you're just becoming a bit more comfortable with it. There'll be plenty more of this practice in your homework.